FAC and NNPC Remittance Embassy, Vice President Oshibajo steps in. Purchasing Managers Index rises for 18th straight month. Markets resume on positive after banking stocks boost performance last week. This is Business Express coming to you from our Abuja studios with me, Musa Abubakar. Now let's bring you up to speed with business development. The central bank's manufacturing index in the month of June stood at 57 index points, indicating expansion in the manufacturing sector for the 15th consecutive month. The index, however, grew at a faster rate when compared to the index in the previous month. Of the 14 subsectors surveyed, 10 reported growth in the review month. At 59.2 points, the production level index for the manufacturing sector grew for the 16th consecutive month in June 2018. The index indicated a faster growth in the current month when compared to its level in the preceding month. The new orders index grew for the 15th consecutive month at 56.2 points. The Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, says plans are underway to set up the African Women Leadership Fund to help speed up the growth of women-led businesses around the continent. ECA's Executive Secretary Vera Songwe, in a paper Women in Power at a joint AU-EU high-level site, said the Commission will create a network of young women fund managers, train them for 2 years and put them out in the market. The innovative fund seeks to address the fundamental gap in the access of women to finance architecture. As such, it will seek to lower the hurdles of women-owned businesses, promote investments in micro-enterprises and take women's cooperatives to the next level. The fund, she said, complements the Africa Women's Fund of the African Union, the Graca Mitchell Trust, and the other similar mechanism by focus on mobilizing global capital to build a cadre of African women fund managers who will in turn invest in and develop African women-led businesses and micro businesses.
Wednesday, the 27th of June 2018 was early scheduled for the monthly Federation Accounts Allocation Committee meeting, but that didn't hold. Remittances by the NNPC into the account was the bone of contention.
We operate NNPC, it's a business. We operate it as a business. We have invested public capital in that business and we have an expectation of a return. And when that return falls lower than our expectations, then the owners of the business, which in this case is the federal government and the states, need to act. So that's really what caused the deadlock yesterday, where we really felt that the figures that NNPC was proposing for FAC were unacceptable. We felt that the costs, some of the costs couldn't be justified, and so we have decided, rather than approve the accounts, we would go back and do further work.
Next day, the National Economic Council, NEC, aligned with the decision of FAC to hold distribution of funds until the NNPC remits what is due to the Federation accounts. While NNPC says it stands with its decision to remit 147 billion naira into the Federation account, Mahmoud Salih Yunus says the corporation only paid 127 billion naira inclusive of royalties and petroleum profit tax, which constitutionally are in the purview of the Department of Petroleum Resources (DPR) and the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS).
No, we have to go back and look at the figures, the facts behind the figures, so that we will know if we are to accept this on behalf of Nigerians or not.
But that is not all. Yunus says available records show NNPC is not clear in its expenditure whilst usurping the role of DPR.
DPR is claiming ignorance to this. They say they don't know if this thing has actually happened. We cannot just say we don't know on 3.4 billion. You cannot just come and tell us that we don't know. It's not possible.
Due process, he says, has to be followed by the NNPC and its subsidiaries, which is responsible for the bulk of the nation's revenue in its administration. This is coming 3 months after a similar scenario. A committee was set up in March to reconcile figures, and while they are yet to come up with results, states would have to patiently wait for the resolution before they accept any payments.
There are indications that Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is wading into the face-off between the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee, FAC, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, according to some sources. Chairman Finance Commissioners Forum, Mahmoud Salih Yunusa, on behalf of FAC, said over the weekend that the meeting for the month of June has been stepped down to allow investigations into discrepancies found in figures declared by NNPC. He said the decision became necessary to ensure the Nigerian project works for the benefit for all. Lekatum Babatunde was there for Business Express.
Wednesday, the 27th of June 2018 was early scheduled for the monthly Federation Accounts Allocation Committee meeting, but that didn't hold. Remittances by the NNPC into the account was the bone of contention.
We operate NNPC, it's a business. We operate it as a business. We have invested public capital in that business and we have an expectation of a return. And when that return falls lower than our expectations, then the owners of the business, which in this case is the federal government and the states, need to act. So that's really what caused the deadlock yesterday, where we really felt that the figures that NNPC was proposing for FAC were unacceptable. We felt that the costs, some of the costs couldn't be justified, and so we have decided, rather than approve the accounts, we would go back and do further work.
Next day, the National Economic Council, NEC, aligned with the decision of FAC to hold distribution of funds until the NNPC remits what is due to the Federation accounts. While NNPC says it stands with its decision to remit 147 billion naira into the Federation account, Mahmoud Salih Yunus says the corporation only paid 127 billion naira inclusive of royalties and petroleum profit tax, which constitutionally are in the purview of the Department of Petroleum Resources (DPR) and the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS).
No, we have to go back and look at the figures, the facts behind the figures, so that we will know if we are to accept this on behalf of Nigerians or not.
But that is not all. Yunus says available records show NNPC is not clear in its expenditure whilst usurping the role of DPR.
DPR is claiming ignorance to this. They say they don't know if this thing has actually happened. We cannot just say we don't know on 3.4 billion. You cannot just come and tell us that we don't know. It's not possible.
Due process, he says, has to be followed by the NNPC and its subsidiaries, which is responsible for the bulk of the nation's revenue in its administration. This is coming 3 months after a similar scenario. A committee was set up in March to reconcile figures, and while they are yet to come up with results, states would have to patiently wait for the resolution before they accept any payments.
Dr. Obadiah Milafia, former Deputy Governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria, joins the conversation now. Speaking on the accounting procedure, and the lingering issue of revenue remittances. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. What do you make of this whole scenario?
Well, it has happened before. I mean, this is not the first time. Several years back, there have been issues of unremitted funds from the NNPC and the rest of it. And I remember during the time of Engineer Tukur, when he was chairman of the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Commission, those issues were raised countless times. A lack of reconciliation between what was remitted from NNPC and what was registered in CBN and what was actually remitted to the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Commission. So it's been happening for quite some time, and we need to get into the roots of these problems in order to ensure that there is greater transparency in our fiscal finances generally.
Okay. There was a committee set up by the by NEC to see how they can come up with ways or investigate.
Sure.
Right now, they've not come with a mandate.
Yes.
And with this standoff, what do you think is the likely implication to the economy?
Well, obviously, no funds have been allocated to states in conformity with our constitution. And what really has happened is that it's going to affect, the implementation of the budget for some of the states. Some will have difficulty in paying salaries, and there will be slowdown in the economy. No matter how small, these things are likely to, slow down the economy in some way. It is very much regrettable. We need public institutions that are completely transparent, such that there should not be much suspicion as to what people are doing. And, this situation is not healthy. It creates a lot of suspicion. But let me make this point.
Okay.
I said it's been there for decades. There was a time that the NNPC was seen literally as a cash cow. During the military era, so-called dedication accounts were created abroad where a lot of public funds through NNPC were channeled abroad to be stored in these illegal, criminal, so-called dedication accounts for the military to satisfy themselves and their friends. Subsequently, even during civilian time, the NNPC was seen as a cash cow. It took decades before there was even an audit report. We're talking about almost 40 years before there was a real standard audit. I know that in 2014, former President Jonathan actually instituted an external audit by PwC, and those audits were supposed to have been made public. It was a step in the right direction, but it looks as if that culture of perceiving NNPC as a cash cow has continued, and the NNPC themselves have behaved as though they are not accountable to anyone. I don't think we should allow the situation to continue. We need to reform the NNPC to be as good as Saudi Aramco and Petrobras of Brazil and the one in Malaysia. These are world-class energy companies.
But doesn't this signal a warning that it's time for states to look inwards?
Definitely so. Definitely so. It is very clear that that is a strong signal, but that does not detract from the point that if we have a fiscal rule, and the fiscal rule says that this revenue should be collected and shared according to a formula, anybody who breaches that formula is in breach of the law. So yes, I agree. Prudence requires that, states do more to be, autonomous financially. But if it is their right, they should be given their rights.
Okay, since Nigeria has adopted the globally accepted finance reporting standards, would you say compliance is an issue here?
Well, I don't think it is a big issue. No, I don't think so, because, once we give a dictation and we give a rule, they have to follow it. The central bank has told all the banks, from this year you're supposed to report according to internationally agreed financial standards. They comply, but NNPC is still run like a cash cow. It is not a modern corporate organization. Unfortunately, it is in the interest of the elites and of the industry itself, because there's a lot of collusive oligopolistic behavior in the oil industry. So everybody has an interest in having this opaque system. You know, mind you, we don't even have a meter system. In Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in Qatar, people that are 10 times richer than Nigeria, they use the meter system. No international company can cheat them of 1 barrel of oil. But in Nigeria, they can cheat us of hundreds of millions of barrels of oil. And it is going on, and nobody gives a damn about it. It is daylight robbery against the Nigerian people. So long as we don't have a meterized system for the oil industry, nobody can tell you for sure how much they are digging out of our soil, how much they are taking out, and how much the Nigerian people are entitled to in terms of their just rights to benefit from the oil of their land.
Okay, how important is a quick resolution of this to the running of the economy, considering that the budget has just been signed recently?
Well, some accounting reconciliations need to take place. And I believe that they can do so very quickly. It should not be quantum science. It should be able to do so in the next week or two and sort it out. But going forward, it should be a punishable offense for any agency of government to hide data, especially financial data, that have immediate policy application. That is illegal and should not be encouraged. But over and above that, for the long term, we should encourage NNPC to be reformed. We need to have the petroleum industry be completely implemented. I know there are foreign companies that are, sharks in the industry who don't want it. They don't believe in it because it is going to free the industry and liberalize it so that there will be greater transparency. They don't want that, but we must force them to do it. It is in Nigeria's interest to have a transparent financial system and a more 21st century looking NNPC that is respected by everyone.
Okay, what's the way out of this standoff?
The way out is, well, they should work behind the scenes and reconcile the figures so that, the monies can be transferred. I don't think NNPC has a right to keep billions of dollars for any other thing without informing anyone. It should not be. This is not their money. This is the money of Nigerian people. NNPC is there only because it is serving the Nigerian people, and they cannot behave as though they are a government within the government. Every figures must be made transparent, and I blame the government for failing really to be on top of this. NTA has tried, but NTA is slightly far removed. It is just a monitoring agency. It has no powers of any kind. But the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Petroleum, who is the President himself, need to ensure that systems are put in place to ensure that there is greater transparency, that all the funds that are available should be there and known to be there, and whatever is due for NNPC to do its work or to repair refineries and other things can be done, but the bulk of the money should belong to the Nigerian people, belongs to the states. This is not to say I recommend that we simply gather the money and consume it. No. Left to me, no money from NNPC should be used to pay salaries. If we can't fend for the money somewhere else, we should forget it. All this money should be used for infrastructures, fast trains, highways, harbors, housing, and human capital investment for the benefit of present and future generation of our children.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Obadia Milafia, former Deputy Governor at Central Bank of Nigeria. Early morning data show that oil prices have retreated following an increase in output by Saudi Arabia and Russia. Let's see how commodities are faring around the world. stocks made a rebound in the last week of June to close positive, buoyed by banking shares. Let's join Bosede Abel for a review of the market.
A total of over 2 billion shares worth 21.5 billion naira in 18,534 deals were traded last week by investors on the floor of the exchange. The NSE All-Share Index and market capitalization appreciated by 1.10% to close the week at 38,278.55 and 13.8 trillion naira. All other indices finished higher, with the exception of the NSE Banking and the NSE Oil and Gas indices that depreciated by 1.09% and 1.73%, while the NSE ASM index closed flat. The financial services industry, measured by volume, led the activity chart with 1.5 billion shares valued at 13.5 billion naira. The consumer goods industry followed with 237.7 million shares worth 3.4 billion naira. The third place was occupied by the conglomerates industry with a turnover of 88.3 million shares. Trading in the top three equities, Union Bank of Nigeria, Sterling Bank and Wema Bank, measured by volume, accounted for 700.9 million shares worth 2.01 billion in 501 deals. Also traded during the week were a total of 4,211 units of exchange-traded products, ETPs, valued at 96,115.90, executed in 18 deals. A total of 6,108 units of federal government bonds, valued at 3.7 million naira, were traded in the week in 13 deals. 32 equities appreciated in price, 39 equities depreciated, while 98 equities remained unchanged.
Britain and Nigeria are exploring ways to list Naira-denominated bonds on the London Stock Exchange to help fund infrastructure projects in Nigeria. This came to the fore in February when Britain said its export finance agency will add the Naira to its list of pre-approved currencies, allowing it to provide financing for transactions with Nigerian businesses dominated in the local currency. Charles Bowman, who acts as an ambassador for the British capital's financial district, said during a 3-day visit to Nigeria, during where talks with the Vice President, Minister of Trade, Commerce and Industry, and representative of both Nigeria Stock Exchange and Central Bank. Bowman, who is London's Lord Mayor, did not provide specific details of who had been involved in the talks, how advanced discussions were, or when such a move could take place. Britain voted in 2016 to leave the European Union, which has forced London to rethink its trade ties with the rest of the world. The United Kingdom and the EU struck an agreement in December that opened the way for talks on future trade ties. Britain is due to leave the EU in March next year, a month after presidential elections are scheduled to take place in Nigeria. Stocks on Wall Street and across Europe resumed Monday in the red following trade jabs by U.S. President Donald Trump and the EU. Global Market Updates is next, and Moplan Dakok is our guide.
Stocks across Africa ended the outgone week in mixed sentiments. South Africa remained popular on the market as JSE Africa Top 40 gained as much as 3.49%. Kenya's Nairobi All-Share Index lost 0.02% to close at 175.50 basis points. Tunisia and Ghana indices closed negative as the TUN index lost 0.06% and the JSE Composite Index dropped by 0.04%. Namibia overall index closed positive. It went up 3.05% to close at 1,283.68. Global futures traded higher to close the week. European stocks recorded impressive bounces. FTSE 100 advanced 0.28%. DAX index 1.06% and CAC 40 0.91%. Stocks in the United States also appreciated. Dow Jones gained 0.23%, S&P 500 0.08%, and Nasdaq Composite Index 0.09%. Elsewhere, Japan's Nikkei 225 inched up 0.15%. The Hang Seng Index of Hong Kong and China's Shanghai Index went up by 1.61% and 2.55%, driven by what analysts see as well-priced stocks.
Let's see how the Naira is trading with other currencies across the world. This is where we drop the anchor on Business Express. Join us on Wednesday for another edition. I am Musa Abubakar.